Hi all, let's have a look at game 4 of the World Chess Championship. Sergey Karjakin playing white, plays e4 like he did before with the white pieces. e5 from Magnus, so classical opening, the royal lopez. So that usual trick, a6, very important. White can't win the pawn, just a quick reminder, because of queen d4, black ends up actually being slightly better. So we have bishop a4, knight f6. It's all been seen before so far. Now rook e1. In game 2, d3 was played. So we have rook e1, which is actually the most popular move. So after bishop e7, rook e1 is by far the most popular move. b5, pretty standard stuff. Both sides now castled. h3, c3 is also popular in this position. Bishop b7, d3, so this is the main move. So this bishop could be active on this diagonal. White tries to reinforce here this e4 pawn against that bishop. d6, so with the extra protection on the e5 pawn, the knight now threatens knight a5. White wants to preserve that bishop. So a3 giving the bishop a2. We have queen d7. More usual is actually just knight a5 in this position. So for example, knight a5. There's quite a few games here. This kind of start position. But okay, queen d7 is popular as well. It keeps an eye on playing d5 sometimes. Knight bd2. Knight often heads to f1, and then it can either go here or here, which could eye sensitive light squares. Rook fe8, which facilitates bishop f8, and potentially d5, which the queen is naturally supporting as well, as mentioned. So this can help try and open up this bishop on the diagonal. We have c3. This looks a little bit on the timid side, personally, and more usual is actually knight f1. c3, it kind of I mean, it does deprive the d4 square from black, but is it strictly necessary? There's some extra light square weaknesses created by inferi. But anyway, it has been seen before. We have bishop f8, knight f1. Now here with knight f1, actually bishop g5 is a little bit of a nuisance, and that's stopped with h6. If black rushes to play d5, then bishop g5 could come into the mix. So d5 here anyway is still on the cards. And white actually just plays knight 3 to h2. Yeah, he doesn't try and clamp down on black playing d5. I think it might actually be tricky. Let's just 100% check this position if d5 can be stopped. Well, actually the engineer is suggesting knight e3 with a small edge for white. Yeah, maybe this is viable. If we try and play for d5 like this is still viable. I don't think d5 is on the cards actually. There might be I think there's a downside, a significant downside here. Yeah, it's possible. It's giving an edge for white. So basically, knight e3 is interesting, just to clamp down on d5 perhaps. So this looks a little bit intriguing, like encouraging black to play d5. The idea seems to be just to put pressure on f6 here with queen f3. So vacating f3 just to threaten bishop takes h6 and try and cause black some issue with this tactical idea. But we see actually a proof here that d5 doesn't need to worry about this idea of queen f3. d5 is played anyway. But first Magnus, he attacks, sorry, after d5. Okay, so we have the queen f3 idea, which threatens bishop takes h6. So the question is White right that he didn't need to kind of suppress d5, you know, with that knight e3 earlier? It does seem kind of tricky to, you know, potentially address this issue of bishop takes h6. It does seem kind of tricky, and I guess the idea was to try and create some sort of awkward response here, but it's actually very elegant. Magnus's response to bishop takes h6. He first hits the bishop on b3, then he takes on e4, which fixes down the e4 pawn, and he simply now invites bishop takes h6. Note there's the b2 pawn though, so, but surely you might think then, well, why can't White take here then take here? But this is the whole response system that Magnus is conjuring up here, because actually he wants to put pressure on e4 in return and win actually the e4 pawn. So we see actually bishop takes h6, but a key move. Can you see what Black plays here? This is a beautiful idea to this whole arrangement. It's actually a very, very beautiful opening idea. So Black to play. Okay, he plays actually queen c6. Yeah, so he's protecting f6, renewing the, now this is a threat, g takes h6. On knight takes b2, let's just quickly investigate knight takes b2. I'm not sure it's that great. Bishop g5, and White has like attacking pressure here. Yeah, this is actually, this probably is in White's favor overall. Okay, so we have actually in this position queen c6, and now White does take on c4 to relieve the b2 problem. But now he is losing the center pawn, so he's actually just won a flank pawn, but losing a center pawn. Okay, the pawns are doubled here, and okay, this is a kingside pawn. You might think king safety, but without the light square bishop, it doesn't seem that convincing that there's any attack. So Black has essentially got a great position from the opening. This can be parried quite easily with knight d6, and Black's doing really well at the opening. He's got no problems whatsoever. He's actually looking forward to torturing a backward pawn here on b2. So White's, you know, passive with bishop c1. This really isn't a great advert for White playing in the lopez here. It seems the whole concept of queen f3 and bishop takes h6 has been kind of positionally refuted. Yeah, White doesn't want a position like this, surely. It's like wasting the white pieces in a world championship match. Black's just absolutely fine. We have knight g5, and in fact Black can even repel this knight. He supports e5 to be able to play f5. So kicking the knight back, it's just passive for White. Bishop e7, and there's even the aggressive bishop h4 now. There's some dark square weaknesses around here. It's funny, there's light square weaknesses here actually with these two pawns committed, and there's dark square weaknesses here as well. Yeah, yes, it's strange that White has this position, in fact. But anyway, is it enough for Black to actually convert these advantages, these weaknesses? I mean, it's fine having weaknesses, but Black needs to be in the position to exploit them, right? A weakness isn't a weakness if it's not that exploitable. So, okay, we see f4 actually challenging Black on the e file and saying, actually, I want to get this blockade on e3. But black is not tempted with either takes or e4. Both fall short. If e takes f4, white is doing okay, actually. Yeah, this sort of position is actually going to be okay, because we've got opposite coloured bishops. White's got that active rook on the e file. This pawn could be weak later, actually. Yeah, I mean, if we follow this, just as an example variation, the opposite coloured bishop should be enough to hold a fortress. And if we played e4, then that blockade square on e3 is attractive. So knight f1, and what's the big deal? Yeah, white's fine. White's fine. Okay, but yeah, we have actually bishop h4 being played instead. So instead of e takes or e4, bishop h4. So this is sharp alternative, and it's basically forcing white to play f takes e5. Everything else kind of falls to bits, because remember there's black pressure here, right? So white has to be very, very careful. If he plays a move like this, he's just falling to bits. Knight e4, nasty pin on the rook. There's nothing really. If king h2, then we see b2 dropping with e takes, then taking, and that's a disaster for white. So basically, it seems that after bishop h4, white has to play f takes e5, and we get this scenario of simplification with black having the bishop pair, and the start of the torture session now for Magnus. So basically, can he use the bishop pair and white's weakened light squares to maybe invade later with the king? Does that constitute a winning grindable advantage from here or not? Rook d4. In fact, the black rook now switches in, threatening a mate in one. Yes, a moment of excitement. There's a mate in one threat, but it's parried. And now another moment of excitement, offering a poisoned pawn here. This cannot be taken because of bishop b5, which is a winning pin. And basically, where is the rook going? Nope, the rooks are definitely like coming off. Bishop g5, we have king g6, and now this might seem a very strange decision. It seems as though bishop d8 might be possible, but we have a much more committal move, h4, which gives the knight at least a square. It doesn't have that many squares. It gives the knight h3, but it weakens h4. So it might seem strange, but actually it is kind of a resourceful move. It's inviting this h pawn to be weak, but the knight comes in now to h3 to go to f4. We have bishop f7. On the immediate, bishop takes h4, which is plausible. Check. Now maybe king g4 is slightly better than king takes g5. Now if we have this position, it's opposite coloured bishops, and it might lead to a draw, really. Believe it or not, it might lead to a draw. Yeah, because that's the nature of opposite coloured bishop scenarios. It's easier to blockade the extra pawn or two, or three, sometimes even. So yeah, the blockades become much more pronounced in opposite coloured bishop raw endings quite often. So yeah, so bishop takes h4 is interesting, but yeah, bishop f7 was played, keeping more tension in the position. Bishop e7, and then we have this swapsy, bishop takes h4 for d6, bishop d8. Okay, so Magnus has got a 2-to-1 pawn majority here, and these pawns are kind of fixed by their minority of pawns because of this restraining pawn with the en passant, and that restraining pawn is well supported on the light square. So the two ingredients here which might be used for a win is to infiltrate with the king over here, and maybe also tie down white with the pawn majority over here. And if that doesn't work, try and get the king back and use the pawn majority. And yeah, this might take a few moves. So king e2, g5. So that pawn majority, the 2-to-1 pawn majority. Knight f2, king g6. The king is wandering across. This is a fixing move, quite a committal fixing move. Now perhaps there's an argument for bishop e6, but I don't think one should get too excited about bishop e6. It does create a passed pawn, but it's not entirely apparent that that will be winning actually. For the moment, bishop b6, and we're going to return to this fantastic possibility here coming up soon. a5, knight d1. Now Magnus did commit to f4 here. Let's use this light square bishop. Let's just set up a fictional variation with bishop e6. The question is this actually enough to grind out a win? I'm not entirely sure actually, because say we take, there's actually blockade potential on g3, believe it or not. If we get this scenario, check, how does white actually get the pawn going here? It can be made very difficult, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it's a point of investigation. Instead of this committal f4 to investigate bishop e6, it's a point of investigation. But my verdict at the moment is unclear on that. So f4 is played, bishop d4. Now, yeah, Magnus wants to keep the dark square bishop actually. So he plays bishop c7, knight f2, and white seems to be getting some sort of strong fortress setup. But bishop g2, so it provides the possibility of f3 sometimes at the moment, but that's not committed to. F3 would just block in the bishop actually quite significantly. So king f7, king c2. The king is wandering over to the b3 square. That's the destination here, to try and torture white with a king invasion, which is supported in fact by the light square bishop to evict the white king if needed. Is that enough? Is that enough? So the bishop is going to evict the king from the light squares to support king b3. So king b3, but king c1. Is this enough? That's the question. Knight d3 is offered, so that if takes, we'll always have d2 then, and taking here, and that could be nasty because we've got outside passed pawn. White doesn't have to take here though. So we have this deep invasion on a2. Is it enough? Not really. It's not really doing that much. Yeah, so we see not much happening for a moment until here, f4, another f4 to f3 roll, another committal move which seems to target, allow g5 as a target. But it's a poisoned pawn here. Bishop d7 is a poisoned pawn. Shouldn't be taken. King c1, it wasn't taken. If it is taken, then yeah, then that's bad. Bishop e6. And that's winning for black. So for example like this. And the passed pawn wins a piece. And that'll be end of game. But no, white can just maintain his fortress with a sensible king c1. And now we have coming up another committal looking move, bishop f4. That's taken. So this knight and bishop scenario. Okay, king c1. And yeah, in fact, you know, king c1 seems to invite the king to, you know, go back. Yeah, fly over there. But you might think, is king c1 necessary? Yes, it is, because the knight kind of can't move because the bishop's hitting g4. Yeah, and I don't think g5 looks particularly desirable either. I think king c1, just letting the king flee back and torture over here, is the best policy. Let's just check that. I think Actually, G5 might actually be. It's going to happen anyway. So, yeah. But G5 is on the radar here as a candidate move. Actually, so both these are the two candidate moves, which don't seem to lose by force. But if the knight moves, then bishop takes G4, obviously. So there's this. The white's left with these two moves, G5 and King C1. So he doesn't mind this happening. Yeah, that's the only move to like hold B2 without losing G4. The knight can't move. So yeah, but it's enough. I mean, the thing is, it's enough. No less, no more. It's just enough. This stops King G5 to H4. So knight E4 check stops that King G5. And yeah, that's a temporary. This represents a temporary pawn sack here of G4, because white's going to get F3. And now, yes, it's looking even more drawish. And you might think, hold on a sec, what just happened there? You might think, hold on. The thing is, it's presenting to the light square bishop, but C4 is the problem. It's not that easy to win A4 without dropping C4. So given that equilibrium, it's no big deal to play A4. Okay, let's not try and bypass any moment of great excitement in this game. So King F2, King G4. Yeah, so black is in fact tied down to protect C4 here. Knight F1. Yes, if the bishop creeps over to C6, then we just go knight D2, yeah. King G5, knight D2. It's pretty clear now that there's no progress from either side possible. So a draw was agreed at move 94. Please excuse me, seemingly putting the fast forward on this game, but I think the general gist of the plans has been mentioned, that black had that pawn majority over there and the light squares to play with. He tried and used both. Didn't kind of work out to generate any potential decisive advantage on this occasion. Okay, so hard grind there in game 4. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.